She'eino's eyes suddenly came into focus and landed on her, feeling alien and uninterested in their temporary inquiry. And then they started rolling aimlessly again, but in that moment, Rivka had felt utterly exposed and had to quell a gasp. With some effort, she wrenched her gaze from the glory of She'eino's unearthed face and ran home, to Itzik's surprise. "You're home early, my daughter," the Rebbitzin said. "And breathless?" She mumbled, after She'eino's fashion, then straightened up and said, "I will never refer to the barber as Itzik the Mustache. He is a noble man." The Rebbitzin's brows rose. "And the right man for the job, I suppose. Did he say anything to you to cause such agitation?" No, he would never, no. Being around all these beggars, it's harder than I thought." The Rebbitzin hugged her daughter. "You are an excellent Jewish maiden. Any man would be happy to marry you." "Ah!" Rivka yelped. "Why are you saying that?" "Easy now. What's gotten into you?" "Nothing, mother, nothing at all." And with this, she stormed into the room she shared with her brother, even though they had both needed privacy for years. It could not be helped, and a makeshift screen had been erected between their two tiny beds. Thankfully, Aharon was at Torah study with their father. By dinner time, she had recovered her wits and decided to approach the day's incident in a wilier manner. "I'm learning so much," she said to her family. "I don't know why I was so reluctant to minister to the poor. I really like it." The rabbi smiled. "You're a girl of great character," he said. "I couldn't hope for a better daughter, or son," he added, turning to Aharon. There were thank yous and an air of general satisfaction around the table. Rivka proceeded with the second phase of her strategy. "Mother, surely the charitable society keeps records on all our needy people." "Yes," the Rebbitzin said, "albeit brief ones and often distorted. Beggars are not a reliable source of facts." "Right, but if I learn something new about someone and need to add it to a record, how would I go about it?" "You can always tell me, and I would change the record. Or better yet, you can do it yourself and save me the trouble. Just make sure not to damage any record." Rivka felt triumphant, but kept her tone subdued. "Of course not. Where do you keep them?" "In that wooden box under the credenza. Help yourself after dinner." When everyone had retired to their rooms, Rivka lowered the candle and reached for the box. There were dozens of records, many of people who had passed or moved on to some other shtetl, and all told a story of misery and awful times. Her fingers ran feverishly to She'eino's record. There wasn't much there. He was a city person, although from which city remained unknown. He had been found with a purse full of gold on him, which suggested he was from a wealthy family. The money was being kept by the rabbi and would be returned should She'eino's condition improve or should a related party claim it. At this, Rivka's heart beat faster. Was the beggar a wealthy scion who had forgotten his station? Her romance novels were full of such types. She'eno was found by male examination to be Jewish, in reasonably good physical health, but showed no sign of intelligence. No one in the shtetl had ever seen him, and the few people who had claimed to know him turned out to be after his money. The only other thing on his person had been a scrap of paper with a name, Dvoryanin. Some inquiries were made, but there were no Dvoryanin in the area, and She'eno did not respond to that name in any case. The next morning, Rivka, who had barely slept, rushed to go see the young man. He was as heartbreakingly beautiful as he had been the previous day, and Rivka had to dismiss the warnings of her mind against spending more time with the gorgeous Simpleton. "Do you recognize me?" she asked. "Is your name Dvoryanin?" He mumbled over her questions, like the buzzing of a very large fly. Was he a beast then? How cruel that a man devoid of a mind should be possessed of such a striking countenance. Or was he, like her father had said, a man with a taint on his soul, which might be healed or removed? And was she the woman to do it? She listened for minutes, then hours on end, longer than anyone had ever bothered to do, and after a while, she noticed patterns in She'eno's mumbling, and as she listened even more closely, she recognized words and even fragments of sentences. They were unmistakably Hebrew. With enormous excitement, she jotted down the words and soon filled a whole notebook page with these incoherent snatches. It was late, and she returned home. Once in bed, she read the words by candlelight. They were jumbled and fantastical, and yet tantalizingly familiar. Fragrances, pastures, Pharaoh, fig trees, foxes. She couldn't make sense of them. One thing was clear to her now. She'eno was not a simpleton. He was speaking to himself, lost in some inner world that no one had access to. But she had accessed it, hadn't she, when his piercing eyes had seen for the briefest of moments. Rivka dreamt of him all night, and in the morning she returned to his side. "Bad idea," her mind kept saying. "Bad idea." A girl's heart easily sweeps away such admonitions. "What do you keep saying?" she asked She'eno. "What is the story you're trapped in?" She placed her hand on his shoulder again, and this time he looked straight at her, and the words gained in clarity. Now there were full sentences. She wrote them down fervently. That night she read through the fragments yet again, and one sentence stood out. "On my bed at night I sought him whom my soul loves. I sought him, but I did not find him." She stifled a cry of recognition as her heart thumped, threatening to burst out of her ribcage. It was the Song of Songs, the most beautiful love poem ever written, the ancient pining of lovers captured in silky, sensuous words. Why would She'eno be repeating these words over and over again? It made him even more attractive, even more irresistible. The next morning, she devised a new plan. "Mother," she said, "I would very much like to go with you to Minsk." "Alas, my daughter, we have no money for shopping," the Rebbitzin said, and by that she meant beyond the bare necessities. "No, it's the library I'd like to visit," Rivka said. "I'm told there are ancient Jewish manuscripts there, and I'd like to see them." Manuscripts? When did you develop an interest in manuscripts? "I suppose I'm my father's daughter after all," Rivka said with a smirk. Once in Minsk, Rivka went to the library, but not to see the manuscripts. She approached the librarian, a prim older woman, and asked, "Does the name Dvoryanin mean anything to you?" The librarian eyed this obvious country bumpkin with contempt, but there was something eager and fresh about the girl that moved her somehow. "Why, of course," she said. "Tragic story. Lady Natalia Dvoryanin drowned in an accident last year. Her fiancé tried to save her and nearly drowned himself, then disappeared. If you ask me, it's best for the family that she died." "Why is that?" Rivka asked, her voice trembling as the terrible truth emerged. "The fiancé was a Jew, and their engagement was a shameful affair, a scandal that rocked our elite. Jews have no business marrying into the nobility." Rivka clarified a few more things with what strength she had left. She had no tears or words as her heart shattered into 1,000 pieces. When she met the Rebbitzin at the appointed spot in the market, her mother was puzzled and concerned. "What happened, my daughter? Surely the sight of these manuscripts did not fill you with woe." "Please don't ask, Mother. Please don't." A few days passed. Rivka had youth and kindness on her side. Her spirits recovered enough to pay She'eno one last visit. After he had mumbled for a few minutes, she asked, "Was she beautiful, Lady Natalia?" The mumbling stopped, and an awful change came over She'eno's features. His face seemed to decompose. His mouth opened several times wordlessly, as if he were a fish out of water. Then an odd keening rose from his throat that threatened to turn into a full-blown scream. Rivka pressed the young man against her chest, earning disapproving glances from passers-by, and said, "You're not alone. Not anymore." Perhaps She'eno heard and understood her, or perhaps his body softened. Whatever the case, the keening turned into sobs that racked his youthful frame for hours on end. Rivka never let go. Eventually she told her parents what she had found out about She'eno. His real name was Georg Lievov, son of Minsk magnate Smuil Lievov, a man famous for running his businesses like clockwork. Georg had been presumed dead after leaving a suicide note for his parents in the wake of his fiancée's demise. His body had never been found for good reason. Georg had not died. He had gone mad with grief instead. Lievov came to fetch his son personally, and when presented with the purse of gold the rabbi had kept safe, he not only turned it down, but tripled the sum and donated it to the shul. This would cover the rabbi's meager salary for many years to come. "You have done a great mitzvah, my daughter," the rabbi said. Rivka bowed to him sadly The Rebbitzin took her hands and whispered with all the motherly love that swelled in her, "And you wrought a miracle. Your heart was greater than its own breaking."